Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about fostering creativity and innovation. Basically, we're using the words everywhere. Everywhere you turn, people are shouting at you, you need to be more innovative, you need to be more creative, but no one actually knows what that means or how we can do it. So I'm going to give you a brief outline on creativity, innovation, design, and where that comes in. I'm a product designer, and then I'll go into my own invention and how I use the process to invent my product. So just to give you a bit of background, since the age of 5, it was my lifelong ambition to become an inventor. I went through my whole childhood keeping ideas and just saying to everyone, I want to become an inventor. I realised at school that the closest I couldn't do a degree in inventing, it would have to be engineering. So I went on and studied mechanical engineering in London. Straight after it, I went into design, product design. It was there that I decided I wanted to invent something that would actually change the world, but in the household world. A product that everyone could use, a product that was needed. So I set out to try and solve the problem. I fundamentally believe that if you're passionate about any subject or anything, you can achieve anything. Throughout my career, throughout my childhood, throughout various points in my life, you'll always meet someone who thinks it's a bad idea and it won't work. But basically, if you ignore that and you carry on, I honestly believe you can reach any goal that you want to. So the EU ambassador, the European Union appointed 25 of us across Europe, January 2009, to foster creativity and innovation amongst Europe. But the challenge was to foster it not only amongst the education system and industry, but amongst everyone. So 25 of us, a lot of them were my role models and idols, Edward de Bono, Sir Ken Robinson, Philippe Stark. We all worked together over the last year to write a manifesto. Now you can see up here, it took us 9 months to write, and we basically made 7 commandments that we think any European country should use to foster creativity and innovation. I'm not going to go through all of these now, but they are available for anyone to see, and it was presented also to the Irish government over here. So creativity, what a big topic. The good news is that everyone can be creative. Honestly, creativity is just a skill. It's something that you can learn, just like learning French or Spanish or any other language. For me, creativity is defined by various different words, obviously to use your imagination, think outside the box. But the main word that I would use for creativity is to be curious. If you're curious, you're creative. If you're questioning why things work a certain way or why they do certain things, then you're immediately trying to solve problems that they're creating. You'll find that children, if you see them even play with toys, you give them a toy, they'll take it apart, create a new toy and play with it. That's curiosity. They've changed that toy into something that they actually want to use and that satisfies their needs. We need to allow for mistakes. In the Western culture, we're afraid of failure, but it shouldn't be called failure or mistakes. You learn from your mistakes, and that's what it's all about. And the creative process is exactly that, and the design process. It's an iterative process that you can go back to at any point and learn from your mistakes. Again, we hate that here. The Americans are very good at learning from mistakes. And the brain, it's actually scientifically proven how your brain works. And when you think creatively, basically when you have a thought, it moves from A to B. So thought's coming in, it's moving along a track, like a train track you can imagine. If you look at that thought and start to jump off those tracks to look at what you're thinking about in a different light or from a different place, in hindsight, it will always be a good idea, but that's where creativity happens. When you jump off those tracks and look at that thought you're trying to do, and then bring it back to the logical process. Obviously, it's needed everywhere, and we all have to realise we all have the potential to be creative. We really do. It's just a skill that can be taught, and I'll show you a few techniques on how we can use it. So creative thinking, again, creative thinking, it's not, it's been given a bad name. It's not about sitting in a room and just brainstorming creative ideas with no purpose, no program, no system, and no end goal. You need, if you're going to use creative thinking, you need a system, you need to ensure your goals are clear, you need to actually know what you're doing, and you can't make people have creative ideas. Again, it's not something that you can go into a room and say, right, let's all have creative ideas and start brainstorming or whatever technique you want to use together. That's pretty much impossible. You need a system, and there are certain techniques you can use. I'll give you examples of some. You need creative effort. Creative behaviour was studied in 1979 by a man named Torrance, and he discovered a third of creative behaviour is actually motivation to be creative. You can use it deliberately to generate ideas, but the new ideas that you're creating must have value. And what I mean by value here, benefits. Again, there's no point recreating or thinking of new ideas if they haven't got a benefit, whether it's to your company, whether it's to a product, and with the user in mind. And again, we're all quite reluctant to be creative because of failure, but all those bad ideas usually lead to a good one. Thomas Edison, he was actually ecstatic when he said this, apparently. I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. So parallel thinking. So I was talking briefly about the brain and having a thought from A to B on a certain track and trying to jump off that track to look at your thought in a different light. Parallel thinking is a system as well for having creative ideas. You basically get everyone to think about the same type of thinking at the same time. Edward de Bono, who is also an ambassador for the year and who is probably the guru of creative thinking and lateral thinking, he invented the term lateral thinking. He has a system which you can use 6 thinking hats for this. And basically all he's trying to say in simplistic terms is that if we all in this room now were brainstorming or thinking of a new idea, let's all be negative together. So just negative, all together, and we'd get all our negative ideas out. Then let's all be positive. Then let's all, have a different, he calls them hats, 6 thinking hats, 6 types of thinking. If you think about it, if you use that process, there's no room for conflict or argument. Because normally when you have an idea, I go to someone and say, oh, I've got a brilliant idea. Normally the answer is, oh, it will never work. Or, I don't think it's a good idea. Or, why would you want to do that? But this way, if we're all thinking negative at the same time, and I say, I don't think that will work because of this, and you all tell me the reasons why you don't think it will work, we've let out all our negative ideas about that project, then we can move on to all the positive, and you'll find that negative people start looking at ideas positively as well. So the system's really simple. It means you have no arguments, you separate your ego from the performance, and you're pooling all the different types of ideas rather than defending your point of view, because it becomes quite a thing. If you've got a good idea and people start saying it's not a good idea, you just end up defending it. Also, it's fact that if you don't like an idea, you're not going to spend much time thinking about it. So lateral thinking, again, as I explained, Edward de Bono created the term. Normally, it's the way we think, we're usually concerned with judgment. In lateral thinking, you basically suspend judgment and look for movement. That's all it is. And again, just looking at this thought or this movement of your thought from A to B, you move out to C, look at it differently, and there's techniques you can use for this, very simple techniques. One of them is called random word, which is a simple technique you can use to get to C. And believe me, when you get to C and you look back, in hindsight, it's always a beautiful idea, but to get there in the first place is a technique you need to use. So to give you an example of lateral thinking, if I asked you now to add up all the numbers from 1 to 100, and unless we've got any mathematical geniuses in the audience, or unless you've heard this before, you can see that adding up all the numbers from 1 to 100 is quite a task. If we thought about it laterally, you can see here, on the top row, we've got the numbers 1 to 100 going across. If we then took the numbers 100 to 1, just going backwards, and put them underneath, then if you added each pair is always equal to 101. So now you've got 100 pairs of 101. And it's easy to multiply 100 by any number, so you get 10,100. So if you divide that by 2, you get the answer. To me, there's hundreds of definitions of innovation. Some are a page long. For me, innovation is quite simply using creativity to add value. That's all it is. You're thinking of new ideas, you're thinking of new concepts, but you have to add value. There's no point in thinking of something or innovating unless it has a benefit. Innovation is also about taking risks. You need to take that leap. Again, in the States, they're very good at this. We're always afraid of the failure to even take that risk. You need to try new things. Again, I've spoken about you need to channel creativity. Don't reinvent the wheel. There is no point. If someone's already doing something that you could use or collaborate with them on, then do that. You'll find that with a lot of products nowadays, the iPhone, various products, the technology isn't made by Apple. That's made by experts, companies, and you're licensing the technology off them. They are. So, again, don't try and be an expert in something that someone else has already done the work for you and research. Just collaborate with them. And I believe collaboration, by the way, is the key to innovation. If you break down the barriers between different departments and get everyone working on a problem or a challenge, you'll find that creative ideas are at their best, rather than everyone from the same department working on something that they all know about in the first place. So design thinking, again, this is a long statement, you don't need to read it. So if creativity is about generating ideas and innovation is the process that brings these ideas to the market, design, or design thinking as it's called nowadays, is basically the process that links the two. That's all it is. And it's a process that helps you think about the user. At the heart of design is the user, and you must always remember, whatever it is you're designing, you have to keep the user in mind. So, my invention. I was 21 years old, and I wanted to invent something that would make me a famous inventor, or do something for the world. And at the time, one of my university lecturers said to me, the place where I'd graduated from, Imperial College, had said to me, why don't you try and invent the world's first non-drip teapot? Because apparently there were scientists around the world working on this problem. There was a professor in the UK, in a university, who was trying to do it for 25 years. There was a team in Russia. There were people. I didn't actually realise how big the problem of dripping teapots was till I set out to do it. So I took this on as a 3-month project. I thought, right, even if I just get some investigation done, that will help the person or me if I happen to do it. So I set out to solve the world's first non-drip teapot spout. So I started by my research. This is the design process now I'm going through very briefly. You start with research, and that goes with anything. If you're trying to set up a new company, unless you have your research, there's no point. You need the knowledge. If you're trying to launch a new product, you need to know who your competitors are, what's out there, is there a need? So research is probably the most important point. Nowadays, ethnography is becoming bigger and bigger. You'll find that a lot of companies have an ethnographic research department. Ethnography, all it means is you're not only understanding the people, but you're understanding their behaviour, their culture, their emotions. That's all ethnographic research is. And products are following that line. If you think of the iPhone, you feel happy when you use it. And that's where products are going. Your actual feeling when you're interacting with a product. Before, it used to be just aesthetics. When I would design a product, I've worked for Habitat, Conran, various shops designing household products. It was purely aesthetics. Yeah, it had to function, but it just had to look good. Now design has shifted. It's all about how the user feels as well. So you need the full package. So I went out, this was in 1998, I went out and I saw how people, even the cafe culture, how they interacted, how they used teapots, and I started testing all different shaped spouts to see what would happen. The next stage in the process was the science of pouring. Believe it or not, there's a thing called the teapot effect that a scientist, a professor, came up with in 1959, and you can see this image up here. It's actually, he named it the teapot effect, and it's basically the surface tension of liquids clinging to a surface causing the dripping. So I started looking at, these are actual sketches that I did back then. I started looking at fluid flow and pressure and all the science and maths behind it. I soon realised that obviously this wasn't enough. So you need to be practical. I realised I had all the science and maths, but it wasn't really taking me anywhere. So I found a potter in London Bridge who made clocks, ceramic clocks, and I knocked on his door and I said, could I spend a couple of months with you making teapots, ceramic teapots? So he said, of course you can. It was quite a weird request, but he was delighted. So every day I'd work with this potter. I came up with various prototypes. These are actually quite tame compared to the ones. I had spouts that looked like roller coasters, literally, and we design, make and test each of them, and I'd observe the dripping. Balls at the end, long lips, taller, you name it, all different prototypes. And then I combined all the practical work I'd done with the science, and the teapot was born. So I'd invented the world's first non-drip spout. As you can see, it's just a groove on the underside of the spout, but this spout can actually be applied to anything that pours any liquid. So wine bottles, petrol pumps, any industrial machinery, anything that pours any liquid. With this slight shape change at the lip of the spout, an upside down V, a groove, it makes it foolproof, non-drip, no matter what material, what liquid you're pouring or how you're pouring. And that was a rough sketch I did just before I came out of the house to try and explain the pouring. And just to end then, it's a slight groove on the underside of the spout. The liquid still comes out of here as normal. Because this groove is here, it's creating a lip on the inside automatically, because you're pushing the ceramic up in there, and it's got a lip inside now. Basically, because the spout's being narrowed, as you're pouring, the fluid's speeding up. So you're pouring the fluid, it's speeding up because there's a narrower space for it to come out of. It comes out here, but it's going faster, so there's going to be less dripping, because obviously if something's faster, it's not going to stick to the surface. As you tip back, so you're pouring your cup of tea, no dripping. As you tip back, because of the ramp on the inside, the fluid doesn't actually get beyond this point as you tip back. So the dripping actually occurs on the lip on the inside, not on the outside. And as you tip back, the fluid goes back in, and you can bang the top of the pot, and it's impossible for that last droplet to fall onto the tablecloth. So it's completely foolproof with any liquid, any material, and any vessel. Thank you.